UFC Fight Night London Blaydes versus Aspinall takes place this weekend, and I'm going to go through the entire card, starting with the early prelims, ending with the main events, giving my prediction and breakdown for every single fight on the card, starting with the early prelim opener of Ludovit Klein versus Mason Jones. This one was recently added on short notice. Mason Jones steps up to take on Ludovit Klein on very short notice, but he's healthy to go. He wanted to come back on the UFC London card, but he didn't know if he was going to be healthy enough. Turns out he was. However, it was a little bit too late for him to get a matchup made for himself on that card, but he's found his way onto it against Ludovit Klein. Ludovit Klein had a big matchup coming up against Ignacio Bahamondes on a pay-per-view card recently, so they've extended it to this date, and Mason Jones is stepping up, and I do believe that Mason Jones is going to get this one done against Ludovit Klein. Ludovit Klein is very good at, stalling against the cage. He has some good moments at range as well on the feet. He's got some explosivity, and he does like to finish people early on in fights. He's got a head kick win over CKB's Shane Young. He had a head kick win before that, even to get into the UFC, so he's very good on the feet, and he does have some decent moments. However, I don't see him finishing Mason Jones. And if he doesn't finish Mason Jones, who has a really good chin and really good pacing and really good cardio in general, I feel like he's going to get worn down as the fight goes on, and I could definitely see a late rounds TKO for Mason Jones here, getting the job done. We just lost Jack Shaw for Wales on the last card. He got beaten by Ricky Simone. I predicted that one to happen, but now Mason Jones, I feel like, will be successful. He's maybe going to get rocked early on, caught with a decent punch or something like that against Ludovit Klein, but I feel like as this fight goes on, Ludovit maybe is going to empty the gas tank going for a finish early. Mason Jones isn't going to go away, and he's just going to build on Ludovit Klein as the fight goes on. I think we can see a bit of a Nate Landwehr-esque performance from Mason Jones here, pressuring Ludovit up against the cage, landing knees to the body, trying out some submission attempts, maybe taking down Ludovit Klein a couple of times in the later rounds. But I'm going to say that he's going to get a TKO against the cage with body shots, with knees to the body, knees to the face. He's very, very good with the cardio and the pacing, so I'm going to go Mason Jones by third round finish. Moving on up the card, Claudio Silva versus Nicolas Dalby. I just can't pick Claudio Silva to win fights anymore. He just seems like a man without testosterone, and it's kind of tough to pick people that look like that. He's, I feel like he's just, at one point he may have had some strength, he had some danger to his game, and he did beat a lot of good people. Like, he beat a young Leon Edwards earlier on in his career. He beat a couple of guys with some good finishes. His win over Danny Roberts, he was losing that fight, but he got a tap to an armbar, even though there was no tap. I have no idea why they stepped in and stopped that fight, but he is good against some low-level guys, and he was good earlier on in his career, but it's very obvious that after 2019, he came back against James Krause, showed no skill or ability whatsoever there. James Krause beat him with one leg on short notice as well. And also he lost to Court McGee, and he just got dominated by Court McGee in that fight too. So I feel as though Nicolas Dalby, although he is not the best fighter himself, he's still like a physical athlete of a guy. He's a strong guy. He can push. He can make it a three-rounder. He rarely gets finished as well. He fought in the UFC originally in his career, had a draw to Darren Till, a win before that to Alessio Zaleski dos Santos, which is a very underrated win when you look back at it, but then he lost 3 in a row, all by decision. He worked his way back towards the UFC, beat Alex Oliveira by decision. A little bit suspect there because he was on bottom, he got stood up, and then he ended up on top afterwards. But he can push in those later rounds. He can make it happen. I know he should have lost to Daniel Rodriguez as well, but he pushed and made it close in those rounds, and Daniel Rodriguez is a very good fighter. He made it very close against Tim Means as well. I just don't think Claudio Silva's going to have that push, that drive, that strength to make it happen as the fight goes on. So I'm going to go with Nicolas Dalby winning this one. 30-27, unanimous decision, dominating positional control over Claudio Silva and winning the fight on the feet especially as well. Nicolas Dalby gets this one done by decision. Moving on, up the card, Mandy Bohm versus Victoria Leonardo. This one's interesting to me, but I feel like it's tough to go off of skill here. Mandy Bohm did not look good in her debut. She was a bit of a hyped up prospect, undefeated coming into the UFC 7-0. Victoria Leonardo at the end of the day is 32, 8-5. Sure, some of the losses that she's had are against some decent competition opponents. She lost to Erin Blanchfield. She's lost to a couple of good female fighters in the UFC. Melissa Gatto's pretty good. Manon Fiorot as well. Dominated her. She's had 2 TKOs in a row. She's coming off of a broken arm. Don't know what that's going to do to her mental game coming into this matchup now. She's been out for quite a while. Mandy Bohm's been out, but not with injury, with like trying to make herself better and improve over that entire time, whereas Victoria Leonardo has been out of the game just trying to recover from a broken hand. So I'm definitely going to lean towards Mandy Bohm here. It's tough to do, but she's way bigger. I feel like Victoria Leonardo should really be a strawweight in the UFC. 64-inch reach for Victoria Leonardo. 5'4", you've got 5'6" in the case of Mandy Bohm, and you've got a 71-inch reach. I'm just going to double check those heights and reaches on Tapology as well as the Google, because 5'4" for Victoria Leonardo, she's in reality 5'5", and Mandy Bohm, who was 5'6" on Google, is in reality 5'6". So it's not as much of a height difference as I was expecting, but the reach difference is still there, and I feel like Mandy Bohm's going to use that reach difference on the feet massively. I don't see Victoria Leonardo really out grappling her, so I'm going to go with Mandy Bohm. She got hurt in her fight against Ariane Lipski, rocked a couple of times, ended up on the ground, and she was able to just sort of like ride out bottom position and get herself to a decision loss, but I don't see Leonardo finishing her on the feet, so, or hurting her on the feet, so I'm going to go Mandy Bohm gets this one done by decision. Moving on. Up the card, Jai Herbert versus Kyle Nelson. Jai Herbert is a very good fighter. I truly believe that. But I also believe he has not had a break in his career. He came in as an older guy, and the UFC basically said, in my opinion, hey, you're coming into the UFC, you're 32 years of age, 31, I don't remember how old he was, but he's past 30 already as a guy making his debut in the company. And they basically said, in my opinion, we're not going to build you up like another prospect who's 22, 24, 26 years of age. You're going straight to the top. He was doing good against Francisco Trinaldo, had a rough time the first round, but then adjusted and looked really great in the second round, and then got caught on the tempo in the third. Stop the fight! And Dan Hardy had an aneurysm in the commentary booth. And then against Donato Moicano, he had some moments, but really got out-grappled and out-hustled there. I don't see Kyle Nelson out-grappling him. I really don't. He is quite good, but I just feel as though he gets finished quite a bit in the UFC. He has got some power in the first round, but it feels like that power leaves once he's out of the first round. And I think you can't catch Jai Herbert in the first. You know what I mean? Even Ilia Topuria couldn't have had a very hard time doing it. You've got to adjust, wear him down, and then there'll be opportunities to land shots on him. He got finished by Hernato in the second, finished by Trinaldo in the third, finished by Ilia Topuria at the end of the second as well. So I feel like you've got to work into the fight to get a finish against a guy like Jai Herbert. I don't see Kyle Nelson being able to work his way into the fight. I feel like we're going to see a statement performance by Jai Herbert. Kyle Nelson has not been in the cage for a very long time. I don't know how long it's been. I'll check right now. It has been since September of 2020. Jai Herbert is turning around quite quick from his KO loss, but I don't really care, to be honest with you. I think he's just a way better fighter than Kyle Nelson, who lost to Matt Sales. Don't lose to Matt Sales. Yeah, you beat 8-6 Paulo Reyes when he was in the UFC, but don't lose to Matt Sales, you disgrace. Jai Herbert's got this one in the bag, I do believe. I feel like he's going to get it done. Yeah, Nelson's been out for too long. Herbert's been active. I think he's going to start fast and put away Nelson in the first round by TKO. Moving on up the card, Muhammad Mokaev versus Charles Johnson. I like this matchup. I did like it in the first. I didn't really like it too much in the first place, but now they've sort of had some beef online. I'm kind of more invested by this. I think Charles Johnson is going to give him some problems on the feet. That's what I feel like. I feel like a lot of people are overlooking Charles Johnson because his name doesn't end in a V. And that seems to give you some bonus points in terms of how you're perceived by MMA fans. He's very good at striking. He trains at Tiger Muay Thai in his off-season and stuff like that to improve his striking. He's got 5-round cardio. He's very, very good. I've watched a lot of his fights. He's very technically sound as a fighter, but most flyweights are, so it's kind of hard to see just where they stack up against other technically sound people. But I feel as though we're going to see either a late-round submission, like a third-round rear-naked choke for Muhammad Mokaev, or a decision win, 29-28. But I do believe that in that first round, I don't think you can pick Charles Johnson to win, but you can have the logical mindset to say, this ain't going to be no Cody Durden walk in there, flying knee, guillotine, finish him in the first round. Johnson's a very good fighter. I feel like he's going to give Mokaev a lot of problems early on with the boxing, maybe some kicks here and there as well. Mokaev's going to also scrap back on the feet, but maybe Charles Johnson gets the better of the stand-up in the first round. But I think as the fight goes on in round 2, they're going to go back to the corner, and Mokaev's corner's going to tell him, get the grappling going. Enough playing around on the feet. Let's start forcing the grappling on this guy. I think it's going to be a tough grappling session for Charles Johnson in the second. Maybe he stuffs a couple of them, but eventually gives up his back, and Mokaev starts ground and pounding him and trying some rear nakeds, but Johnson survives it. And then round 3, I think he's going to get taken down again, and then Mokaev's going to cinch up a rear naked choke. So I'm going to go over third round, rear naked choke for Muhammad Mokaev. I think there's going to be a lot of stuff that he has to worry about from Charles Johnson first of all. But I think I'm going to go over third round submission for Muhammad Mokaev. Moving on up the card. Makwan Amirkhani versus Jonathan Pearce. I'm going to go with Makwan Amirkhani. He's a big underdog. I'll always like him as an underdog because he has got that chance. Whenever I pick him as an underdog, he loses. So take this prediction with a pinch of salt. But JSP, he is good. But he has some worrying performances here and there. He beat Christian Rodriguez in his last fight, took him to a decision. He's looked good recently. He's on a 3-0 streak, and I think a lot of people are looking at that streak, and that's why they've sort of shaped the odds the way they are. Christian Rodriguez ain't nothing special. Omar Morales ain't nothing special. Kai Kamaka III, in reality, wasn't much special either, so I don't really know how I feel about this one. Joe Lozon was able to finish him early on, take him down, get the back. Makwan Amirkhani is really good in the first round with his submissions. And there was a moment in Jonathan Pearce's fight with Omar Morales where he was in a grappling situation with Morales and he kept leaving himself in bad positions. Sure, he's got good cardio and he can tough things out and push a pace. And that is good for him here. But he does leave himself in dangerous submission positions. And if you're nearly getting dash choked by Omar Morales, you ain't escaping the anaconda choke of Makwan Amirkhani, in my opinion. I think they're going to be scrambling heavy in the first round. Makwan might land a couple of big shots early on, start real fast on the feet, get some stuff going there. But I think past that first round, or towards the end of that first round, we're going to see more grappling exchanges, more scrambles. And I trust Makwan Amirkhani to cinch up an anaconda choke and get 2 in a row against Jonathan Pearce here. I reckon he's going to get that anaconda choke at some point because JSP scrambles, tries to come up on a single leg a lot, tries to drive through opponents and just outpace them. And I think he leaves himself too vulnerable. His pressure and cardio is what's good about his grappling, but on a technical level, his scrambles aren't the best. So I'm going to go Makwan Amirkhani. Getting it done early with a submission. Moving on up the card. Nathaniel Wood versus Charles Rosa. I'm going to be going with Nathaniel Wood here. It's hard to pick Charles Rosa. Sure, he's got good grappling, but Nathaniel Wood has got really good takedown defense and really good grappling himself. He's a big guy for the bantamweight division. Not too big, but I don't think he's going to be undersized here against Charles Rosa. And it's also not a case of, they gave me a fight at 145, I took it at 145. Like he said before this, I want to build up and go to 145. So it's not like he's going to build himself up a little bit for that weight class. He's so quick. He's got such good leg kicks. I think we're going to see a vintage Nathaniel Wood performance. He's so good, man. He stepped in on 2 weeks' notice against Casey Kenny and beat him. He just beat him in that fight. I don't know if anyone's seen that fight, but he clearly beat Casey Kenny. It was a bad decision. Whatever. They didn't give it to him. All good. Nathaniel Wood is good enough, and I think he's going to look good at 135, 145, and I think he's going to have a field day with Charles Rosa. Charles Rosa is going to be a little bit taller than him, but I think he's just going to chop at the legs over and over again, start getting his hands going, start stuffing a couple of the takedowns. Charles Rosa has not looked good recently, and I don't think he's going to start improving at this point in his career, being 35 years of age. I'm going to go with Nathaniel Wood getting this one done, and I think he gets it done by TKO in the second round. Just brutal finish over Charles Rosa, who he's already beaten up in the first and the start of the second. Nathaniel Wood gets this one done. Moving on. Up the card. Marc Diakiese versus Damir Hadzovic. I'm going to go with Marc Diakiese here. I think it's a no-brainer. Marc Diakiese's still a good fighter. He showed some more crinkles to his game by showing off some of his grappling skills and stuff like that against Viacheslav Borshev, and showed that he can sort of make stuff happen if he doesn't get it his own way on the feet. Sure, he got punched by Alves with a jab and then guillotined afterwards, and it's not a good look, but at the end of the day, he had a good performance against Rafael Fiziev. Arguably won that third round against Fiziev as well, but there seems to be a style of goofiness and unorthodoxness that can get him on the feet, and also a style of really dominant grappler that can get him on the ground as well. But I feel as though Damir Hadzovic doesn't have much finishing ability against decent opponents, and also just doesn't really look too great or unorthodox on the feet. I think he's very simple, very fundamental, and for that reason, I think Marc is going to have a field day on him and maybe get a KO over Damir Hadzovic, who's a tough guy, but I'm going to call Marc getting a good KO and getting a statement made on this card. Marc gets this one done. Moving on to the main card. Paul Craig versus Volkan Oezdemir. I'm going to side with Paul Craig. It's a tough one to side with Paul Craig on. And most of the time I pick against Paul Craig. He wins. I pick him. He loses. It's sometimes how it goes with Paul Craig. But I think he's really coming along strong with his offensive grappling. And I think that the difference between his first Shogun fight and his second Shogun fight showed that massively. He couldn't even get Shogun to the ground in the first fight. And a year later, like, Shogun was already old at the time. He's not going to deteriorate that much over a year. A year later, he's dominating Shogun in the grappling exchanges. Clean double legs, clean finishes on his takedowns, getting on top, staying on top, being dominant in those positions. It is worrying because Volkan Oezdemir does have some power in his hands, and he does have some quite decent takedown defense as well. But I feel as though Paul Craig is going to throw some front kicks at range on the feet, be a bit goofy with some of the kicks that he goes for, and I just feel as though if they ever end up on the ground, it's going to be a problem. And I like the fact that Paul Craig, a guy who hasn't really got the most skilled of training partners, is now training with Tom Aspinall in the UK, going to different gyms, starting to figure out some new things. I think him and his hard sparring and hard grappling training with Tom Aspinall is going to pay off for the build-up of this. And even if he can't get the takedown, he can always pull guard. And Oezdemir is not the brainiest of guys. So I'm going to go with Paul Craig getting this one done. I think he might get a takedown stuffed early on, but then Oezdemir's going to like try punching him as he's got a single leg, and I think Craig's just going to sort of like tip him over on a single leg and just hoist it over the top of him and stuff like that, and then just sort of end up on top, take the back, get some dominant position on the ground, maybe feel out the stand up first, and then mix in a takedown when Oezdemir's least expecting it and drive him over himself against the cage. I just think Paul Craig is no longer a guy who has to be losing to win. He didn't look great against Nikita Krylov early on, but I feel like Nikita Krylov's so underrated, and we'll get to his fight in a second. I'm going to go with Paul Craig here. I think he's going to surprise Oezdemir and surprise a lot of people with his grappling offense. I think his grappling is just too slept on. Oezdemir has got knockout power, but Craig's been improving his stand-up. I feel like Craig's got this one done. Moving on, up the card, Molly McCann versus Hannah Goldy. No-brainer for me. Molly McCann gets this one done. Way more experienced. Hannah Goldy has, she's done her OnlyFans and stuff like that. It's weird the credentials that you list for women's MMA fighters. But Molly McCann, lesbian, tough, like, a big factor, in all honesty. She beat Luana Carolina, looked great in that fight as well. Had a tough fight with Yi Yong Kim, but Yi Yong Kim's a good fighter. Had a tough fight with Priscilla Capoeira, should have won that fight as well. She's going to make it a scrappy fight nevertheless, but I feel as though Hannah Goldy just isn't complete enough, and some of the girls that she's losing to, like, oh wow, you got a win over 4-4 Emily Whitmire. Wow, really good job. You lost to 13-6 Diana Belbita. You know what I'm saying? Oh, Miranda Granger came in after beating a bunch of cans. You lost to her as well. Like, it's just, I feel as though her level of competition has been so low, whereas Molly McCann, like, the loss to Taylor Santos, it don't look too bad. And sure, she lost to Lara Fritzen, who isn't much of a big name herself, but she beat Diana Belbita. She beat Ariane Lipski. She beat Priscilla Capoeira. Lost to Julian Robertson early on in her career, but I think her grappling's really improved, and I think on the feet, she's so scrappy and so tough. I just don't see Hannah Goldy. I don't see Hannah Goldy out grappling her, and if it's on the feet, Molly McCann gets this one done. I reckon 29-28. Maybe Hannah Goldy has a moment later on in the third round, but in the first two, I reckon Molly McCann gets this one done. 29-28 Molly McCann. Moving on up the card, Nikita Krylov versus Alexander Gustafsson. I'm going to be going with Nikita Krylov. I think he's very good, very underrated, and I really question Gustafsson's reasons for coming back. I think the UFC really need Gustafsson to win this one because they're going back to Sweden in November. And I think that, like, without Gustafsson, if Hermansson loses on this card, we'll get to that in a second. Who do they have to really be on that card? Chimaev, maybe? They could try and do that, but he doesn't really represent Sweden as a whole. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's a bit of a weird one. So, I'm going to be going with Nikita Krylov here. Gustafsson's good on the feet, but Krylov was, like, beating on Ankalaev in the first round. Ankalaev's very good in the first round. You can maybe catch him later on and make something happen later on in the fight, but In the first round, Ankliev's very technical, very sharp, and Krylov put a hell of a pace on him, made him stuff a bunch of takedowns, and then kept doing good on the feet as well, landing good shots. He's got great stand-up. He was whooping up on Paul Craig as well. I think he's a very underrated fighter, and I think he's going to get respect on the feet early, maybe take a couple of shots from Gus, and Gus is going to start feeling himself, but I think they're going to be in an exchange. Nikita Krylov takes him down, and I can actually see like a first-round submission here from Nikita Krylov, getting it done by submission, first or second round. I don't trust Gustafsson's ground game. He has really good takedown defense, but if you can get him to the ground at any point, which I believe Krylov's going to try to do and will be able to do, once he's flat on the ground, there's not much scramble in him. There's not much defense off of his back. He got whooped by Jones as soon as they ended up on the ground, and the same thing happened in his last fight against Verdum as well. Same thing happened against Anthony Smith. As soon as he ended up on the ground, it was like, oh, just submit me, basically, is how it went. And I don't trust that. I don't trust him in his position of his career. And Nikita Krylov's 30. He's been around for so long. So long he's been around. He's been around since 2013. Nearly 10 years in the game. 9 years in the UFC. And he's still 30 years of age. Like, that's experience you can't buy. I think he's going to be improving still. I think Craig kind of got lucky with a triangle. It's what happens with Craig. But I'm going to side with Nikita Krylov getting this one done against Alexander Gustafsson. Second round, first round, rear naked choke submission. Moving on. Paddy Pimblett versus Jordan Leavitt. I'm going to be going with Paddy Pimblett here. I reckon Pimblett's going to win this one by KO in the first round. I think Leavitt is good at grappling, but I watched back his fight against Trey Ogden. He won it based on the grappling positions that he achieved. But arguably on damage, you can kind of give that to Trey Ogden. So I think the UFC know what they're doing here with this matchup. And a lot of people are saying, like, this guy's going to beat Paddy Pimblett. And sure, he beat Matt Sales and had him in a bad position and had him in a triangle. But Pimblett's submission game and his jiu-jitsu is really, really good. He's got really, really good grappling. And the guys that Leavitt was beaten in the grappling department, Matt Wyman with the slam, Luke Flores, yeah, I'm saying, on the Contender Series, cool dude. And then he beats Matt Sales. Sure, he had a tough fight with Claudio Puelles and lost, and Claudio Puelles is a good fighter on the ground, but that's what I'm talking about. Puelles has some level of jiu-jitsu, some level of grappling. We saw that in his fight against Clay Guida. So therefore, it just keeps him out of that danger that Leavitt can put you in on the ground. And I think Pimblett has that same level of danger with his own jiu-jitsu, except for Jordan Leavitt, except for Paddy Pimblett. He's massive and strong for the division, and people underrate that. He's a big guy for the division against Jordan Leavitt here. Very, very big. I mean, 5'9" for Jordan Leavitt, 5'10" for Paddy Pimblett, and I would estimate that Jordan Leavitt's barely 5'9", and Pimblett's like a tall 5'10", you know what I mean? And then we got like a 71-inch reach for Jordan Leavitt, 73 inches of reach for Paddy Pimblett, and he's a big, muscled-up guy for the division as well. I do worry that maybe this whole eating outside of camp situation is going to take a negative effect on his career, on how much he can improve. But he's so strong in the clinch, and we see that with some of the hip tosses that he goes for, and some of the judo stuff that he pulls off. I feel as though it's going to be a bit of a shock to Leavitt if he does try and take down Paddy. I think he'll end up on bottom, and I think if they stand each other back up, and while they're on the feet in general, Leavitt's stand-up, it's just the kind of guy Leavitt is. His stand-up is the stand-up of that type of guy. I know he has a wife and all that type of stuff, but the kind of guy that Leavitt is like the kind of stand-up that he has. You know what I'm saying? That kind of stuff. And I think that's where Pimblett's going to have a bit of an advantage over him, is that explosivity on the feet. Leavitt half throws a lot of his shots and then just shoots. I think Pimblett's going to stuff him, punch the head as he's stuffing it, flip him over, end up with him on bottom, land big shots, and then they end up back on their feet and he gets out of a single leg position and he starts laying into Leavitt against a cage. I reckon we're going to see Paddy Pimblett, no joke, start timing the takedowns of Leavitt whenever he pressures him on the feet. And I think we're going to see Paddy Pimblett land a big uppercut on Leavitt early on in the fight. Leavitt then shoots again and gets himself out of danger, and Pimblett survives it and gets back up. And then we're going to see a flying knee from Paddy Pimblett afterwards that hurts Leavitt to like the chest area. He huddles up against the cage. Pimblett with a big uppercut. Combo hooks over and over again. Vicious first round KO from Paddy Pimblett is how I'm going to go with this one. Pimblett gets it done. Moving on up the card. Jack Hermansson versus Chris Curtis. I'm going with Chris Curtis, the anti-grappler. People speak to fights earlier in his career where he had trouble with the grappling, but I feel as though Chris Curtis has got a solid chance to get this one done. Very underrated grappling defense. We saw that against Rodolfo Vieira. Jack Hermansson, I feel like, is maybe going to get good control of him in the first round, and maybe there's going to be some moments where where Chris Curtis is sort of against the cage on one knee, and Hermansson's got a body lock on him, and he's trying to drag him back down, and Curtis gets his way back up, and Hermansson drags him back down again. But I think Hermansson is going to fail so much with the grappling early. He might get some takedowns. He may even win the first round. But I think mix that in, the failed takedowns, with the body shots of Chris Curtis and stuff like that. Hermansson's stand-up is quite messy. I can see Chris Curtis dipping out of the way of some of the hooks and starting to go to the body and start landing some good shots upstairs. Rip into the body again. Good knees to the body when he stuffs a takedown. And I think we're going to see Jack Hermansson slow down as the fight goes on, tough it out and not get finished. But I reckon we're going to see Chris Curtis pull away in the last 2 rounds of this fight. It's not like he's just jumping in on short notice. You just had a full fight camp against Rodolfo Vieira, who's a similar style of fighter. So I'm going to go with Chris Curtis getting this one done in the second and third round. 29-28 Chris Curtis as Hermansson slows down. Moving on up the card, Curtis Blaydes versus Tom Aspinall. It's tough, but I'm going to go with Tom Aspinall here. This is tough, though, because Curtis Blaydes is one of those guys where you're so good, you're so technical. Tom Aspinall this is. You can be great, you can be fast, you can be technical. Blaydes times a perfect double leg on you, and he's on top of you, and he's not a guy you want on top of you. However, I feel as though Tom Aspinall is just so quick, and there is a trend in Curtis Blaydes' career, and if you pay attention to the sport long enough, you know what I mean. He grapples someone so well, and then he forces it too much on the next opponent. And he loses because of it. Then he does well in the stand-up against someone, and then he tries that a bit too much, and then he loses because of it. It seems to be a trend in his career. And when you look at how each of them dealt with Alexander Volkov, Blaydes barely beat Volkov. He edged out the first 2 rounds, won the first 2 rounds quite clearly, edged out the third barely, but then arguably lost rounds 4 and 5 to Alexander Volkov, who started to come back, and Blaydes was starting to gas out badly, and Volkov was doing some good work. Aspinall absolutely humiliated Volkov. Positional control on the ground, all that type of stuff. And I can actually see Aspinall shooting a takedown on Blaydes, surprising him, getting it, beating him up on the ground a bit. Blaydes working his way back up to his feet, but Aspinall landing a big knee to the body, chopping the legs of Blaydes early on, big knee to the body from Aspinall, elbow as Blaydes gets back up to his feet, really starting to break down Blaydes. Blaydes has got a swollen eye already from an elbow, a cut on the eye as well. His body's starting to feel it already from some of the shots. Maybe Aspinall digs a couple of ground and pound shots in there as well. I think Aspinall's going to light him up with some combos early, land some good leg kicks. Blaydes might have a good shot, a good punch. Aspinall recovers himself, moves out of the way, uses some good head movement, and I think he's going to time a shot on Blaydes, and I think he's going to get him down. Blaydes gets back up, takes the shots that he does, to the body, to the head, elbow on the way back up, that type of stuff. And I think after that, it's going to be Aspinall at range again, chopping the legs, stuffs a takedown from Blaydes, moves out the way, jabs him, still slick head movement, makes Blaydes miss a couple of times and counters him, and then lands like a 1-2-3 combo. Jab, cross, left hook, hurts Blaydes badly, then starts pushing him up against the cage, kneeing him to the body, elbow to the face, Blaydes goes down, ground and pound shots from Aspinall over and over again. First round late TKO from Tom Aspinall is what I'm going to go for there. I think he just looks so much better than these other heavyweights. And there's only so many times you can do it before you have to say, okay, he's not just one-punching people like Ngannou. He's slipping and dipping out the way of shots of Volkov and then timing takedowns. Blaydes was driving takedowns, failing them, pushing him to the cage and dragging him down to the ground and stuff like that. And with Aspinall, it was just so different. And he's a jiu-jitsu guy first. A lot of people know him as a boxer because of how quick his hands are. He started in jiu-jitsu as a child. And when you've done something from a child, we see this with wrestling with Dagestanis, it's just second nature. So I feel as though he's going to be able to defend himself if he ends up on bottom. I don't even see him ending up on bottom. And I think I'm going to go with Tom Aspinall getting this one done against Curtis Blaydes. First round finish. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Click that button up there. Toodle pip. I'll see you later. Goodbye. It's going to be a great card. I wish Darren Till was on it, but he let us down again, boys. Who cares? See you later. Toodle pip.